Okay, so have you ever wondered why, or if it's needed, that we spend our entire lives going through these cycles of pain? Today especially was one of those days where I was like, there's got to be a better way. Because for a lot of us who have suffered severe trauma and abuse majority of our lives and are just now, whether you're my age, right? I'm 42, whether you're like in your 20s, I don't care what age you're at, but you probably, if you're watching this, maybe you can relate that up until this point, wherever you are right now, you've suffered a lot of abuse and you've had cycles of and patterns of pain that just keep repeating and repeating and repeating. And it seems to me, after watching a lot of these life coaches and even people that go to therapy and stuff, you don't actually ever fully release those patterns and cycles until you learn to live in the now. So everything we give energy to never dies. So if you're telling stories over and over again from your childhood, you're keeping them alive. And you may think that you've let them go and you've overcome them, but you're still telling the story. So you're still giving that story power. You're still giving it energy. So it's still alive, very much so. And yes, maybe you learned how to observe it and not let it control you. But the problem that arises is that because it still exists, any new pain or discomfort you experience is going to latch onto those old stories, latch onto all those old pains, and it's going to make it so much harder for you to work through the new pain, the new feeling, right? You're going to end up finding yourself reliving moments over and over and over again. And it's like, well, how do we stop that? How do we stop reliving these patterns, reliving these cycles? And the answer is the now. Oddly enough, when we're in a severe amount of pain, like once we've let the emotional or physical pain consume us to the point where we can't really pay attention to anything around us, we actually do become part of the now, which is why it feels so good to feel those emotions in the moment and then release them. Whether you're crying or exercising or whatever you're doing, it feels good to release them and then move on. But it would be a lot easier if we were in the now when those emotions arose, and that those emotions didn't have previous stories to feed off of or connect to amplify the feeling, right? Wouldn't it be nice? So I've been listening to The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. Whatever, I'll figure that out later. I keep messing that up. It was like when I was watching all those Aaron Doughty movies, sorry, not movies, but videos, I kept saying his name wrong, probably too. I don't know. Names and me, whatever. Anyways, the point is that we have to be in the now, and that in order to not have those stories from the past bring up more guilt and shame and blame and all that, and angst, because anger actually comes from not expressing the pain, right? The more we suppress our pain, the more angry we can get, whether it's grief, sadness, whatever. It's pretty common. And you'll find that for those of us who do suppress the pain and it does become anger, a lot of us end up with digestive issues and inflammation, and our body becomes sick because we're not letting it go. It happens. So we've reached the point where we've acknowledged our stories. We've let ourselves feel the pain from the past that needed to be felt, that we were suppressing as children, as young adults. And now we're at a point where we want to do the next step, okay? The next step is no more telling the stories. You can tell the story in a general sense, like, yes, I was abused, yes, this happened, but don't go into details and embrace and relive the moment, right? Because the more you relive moments, the more you feed it power. So it's very important not to do that, to let that go. And besides, if you're in the now, the story, it's all now. Everything's now. The story, it wasn't really the past, it's now. It's kind of a big concept to wrap your brain around, but the best way I can describe it is that because all is now, you don't actually have to go back to the story, because you can just feel the feelings you're feeling in the moment, this exact moment. And all of a sudden, things that maybe were problems because in your past, the experiences that you keep replaying in your head, those stories from the past, those are creating what you think are going to be future problems. So now, not only are you bringing the past into the now, you're also letting the past calculate your future, which is creating that window of anxiety, right? So before future becomes present, you are constantly contemplating all the different things you could do, the different variables that can affect your future, etc., etc. So you start to become very anxious because you're in the bubble in between, right? The future isn't the now yet, it's still the future. So you're giving all this energy to the future, you're giving all this energy to the past, and you're not in the now. And so that creates a huge discord inside of you where you can't break the patterns, you can't break the cycles. And I know from my experience, like just even walking my dog, because he's getting really good with people, and he's getting really good with, other people being around when we walk in the city, because we come from the country, but he still has a bit of an attitude when it comes to other dogs. And part of it is his own trauma, because he was bullied as a puppy, but my anxiety hits because I'm like, oh my God, what if we run into somebody? What if? It's a future, right? It's a future problem. I'm not living in the now. So I've been slowly easing myself into more of the now. So we're taking a lot more shorter walks, but the more I do it, the more I'm in the now, the more I don't think about it, and I just do it. And I do it for as long as I can stay in the now. And as soon as I start to feel myself getting anxious and I'm losing the now, I will go home, because I'm afraid of what my manifestation powers might do. True story. Anyways, so the hardest part for me is getting into the now, because we do become addicted to these pain cycles. And it is an addiction because the pain itself is its own energy, and the desire to keep the circular motion of the, pain, giving and receiving the pain is a real thing. Our bodies are kind of controlled by the ego and the mind, right? And so we believe these false narratives that our mind tells our ego, and our ego creates all these fears and concepts and ideas for us to control us. It's hard to break that cycle. And I'm finding that for me, the best way for me to be in the now is to literally shut my brain off as much as I can. Now, it's an exercise because my brain has been in control for so long, and because it loves these dangerous patterns of causing harm and putting my brain into the future where it wants to analyze all the potential shit that could go wrong. I have a really hard time being in the moment. I'm getting really good at not reliving past stories and letting that go. And so my shame and my guilt is almost to the point where I feel like I can let it go every day, and I feel a relief, right? Like physical relief. My body can feel it. But I'm having a hard time still letting go of this need to have everything prepared for my future. Because I think that's something that's drilled into us from childhood, right? Plan for your future, plan for your future, plan for your future, go to school so you need to do this, and you do this so you can do that. And everything you're doing is for your future. They not once in my Western culture experience did anyone teach me the importance of being in the moment. Yet as children, we're almost always in the moment. Do you remember being a little kid and seeing something new for the first time? Everything else stopped existing. Right? When I saw something cool and new, whether it was an animal or a sculpture or an amusement park, I was always right there in the moment. And there was nothing else that existed for me. It was just that moment. So my challenge to you guys is, because I'm still learning on this too, is not to figure out how to be in the now all the time yet, but start becoming more aware of when you are in the now and when you're in the future or in the past. Maybe even journal it, maybe even log it. How often are you being in the now, and how often are you being in the future or the past? Maybe just creating that awareness will help us learn how to become more in the now. What do you think? It's worth a shot, right? Have a great day, guys.